Hey everybody, it's Oracle. Hiatus has been completed. I've still been playing the game. I just haven't had the time to sit down and actually record any more play sessions. But either way, we're here reviewing these balance changes for the upcoming patch in March. So I've already taken a look at these, but overall I just wanted to give my opinion on them because these are some actually pretty massive changes. Well, a couple of them are. One of them I think is completely useless, but here we go. We're going over them. So we're gonna ignore those changes. We're gonna just go by card. So first card, this Gunvolt. This card was just like not really used ever at all because it didn't do enough. It was a very early card, but this change actually makes it a little bit better. Even though it still only does 1 damage, it's actually doing it to the lowest unit, so it helps like spread or like direct the damage where you need it in some instances, even though it does 1. It could probably be a dungeon card, especially since the fact that it has Ascension and it deals split now, so there's more Ascension for red right now because red doesn't really have a way to clear their units outside of armed intervention. So I guess this change is okay. This doesn't really do too much. It just makes this card a little bit more playable. Maybe some more Ascension red shells can come out of it if they release more cards for it in the future. Like this could be like a core card for an Ascension deck for red, maybe. But overall, this buff is okay. Doesn't really move the needle too much. This Colonel one, I think is actually pretty good. At first, when I first saw this one, I didn't really think too much of it because Colonel normally isn't that great by himself because he requires so much investment in this environment right now. But overall, thinking about it, it makes the Energy Zero a bit more playable into like a full machine deck you can make, with this giving him a bit more threat on the summon. So this requires some testing, but this is definitely the idea that could happen. So, I didn't even talk about the change. He still has his give red units rush and 1 attack as like an aura effect, but he now has 1 more attack, so he's more formidable on the board. But whatever machine gets placed gives them 1 attack and combo, so he's giving machine units 2 attack and combo. So that helps the Energy Zero that just released, because the Energy Zero gets bigger and MP back based on how many machines are on the board. So if you have 2 other machines, him and something else, and you play the Zero, he comes out as I can't do math right now because it's a lot of numbers, but I think he comes out as like a 5/8. I believe it's a 5/8 with combo and rush, and that's pretty scary. Combo that with like maybe Thunder Edge. That's actually could be a really scary deal. Cellmate Mad Joey, I don't know why they didn't buff this card sooner, but this buff is kind of too late. I mean, with a buff that's coming up later down the line that we'll talk about, it makes him a little bit better, but him just getting the shield is okay. It's like, overall, I think he's better, but for the most part, it doesn't really change his placement. It's just the fact that you can use him as a blocker now, and more an effective blocker, because before you couldn't really use him as an effective blocker. You really just played him in Envoy decks and waited until you Envoyed 3 times in order to be able to use his effect and actually kid him back and keep getting MP back for things dying. So this gives him a little bit more earlier presence in a match. I would think so, but overall, it's nice. But again, doesn't really do too much. Crescent Grizzly actually has effects now. He gives you MP on Decimate and when his HP becomes higher, so this is good for the big green deck, but big green isn't really doing too much right now because things are too fast. Like, almost every other deck besides Uro is too fast for big green to really compete right now. Heavy Pierce is nice. It's like, most of these buffs are just like nice things to core cards that had literally no place in the game at the moment because things have been sped up way too fast for them to like have any sort of presence. So these buffs are nice. Like, you can breathe some life into old cards. So Heavy Pierce, Decimate gave you MP. This gives the big green deck another unit to be playing. Maybe they play this with Geef. Not really sure. I don't really play big green all that much because I'm not too big of a fan of Marissa. Marissa's good, but I don't think she's good enough. Anyway, alright, moving on. Frank, he gets 2 HP. I don't think this does much for Frank because the problem with Frank is everything is too fast. He does not have rush or agility or anything like that, so it's, I mean, for good reason, but it's a lot harder for him to get his second effect off to where he will return himself to the pocket after he dies. Especially with Jury existing in the meta. Jury is like a bane for big green, because at the start of the match you can just play down Frank and then they could just immediately Jury it and you just lost 7 MP for nothing. And they played maybe, yeah, they at the least they play the same amount of MP because they play a 3 cost and they can send Jury. But now they have a unit on the board. You're both -7, but they have a unit on the board and you've been hit for 3 because you can't block. I mean, it makes Frank better, but it doesn't really change where he is. Now, this one is the biggest nerf that was much needed because, oh my goodness, was this card so annoying. Because they first nerfed this card for good reason, because it enabled some really degenerate decks, because she didn't only target green units before. She targeted anything if you had 2 tribes in the grave, so she was being used in 2-color decks, bringing back big things that had really big payoffs. So they had to nerf her to only work with green units. Then she was okay for a little bit, but then they released the Ascension the Ascension archetype, and then a giant unit that green can play that's a really big payoff. So she just became more crazy because Ascension's biggest downside is that you run out of units very quickly, or you don't have units on the board to use, or you don't have the MP for the units. So she fixed all of that by pulling things out of the graveyard and making them cost cheaper, so you have Ascension fodder. And then on top of that, with Yuri being released, Yuri being a 1 MP 10/10 that destroyed 2 things on the board and gave you MP back for that destruction, just accelerated Tiffany like back up into broken territories. So this nerf makes a lot more sense, because now you need 3 tribes in the graveyard, and then she doesn't discount the green unit she pulls back. So she required like what am I trying to say here? She required like deck construction like consideration before, but now she has it even more now, since the fact that you need 3 tribes and she doesn't discount what she brings back. Because with her being 2 tribes and they're releasing the Ascension archetype, we're all human machines, she just inserted herself into that deck because she just fit perfectly. Because the scariest unit in the Ascension archetype is Cacti, and he literally by himself dying fits the requirement for Tiffany. So you didn't care if Cacti died. Cacti died, you just play Tiffany, you can have your Cacti back for 1 MP. So this nerf was much needed, and it's well deserved. So I'm glad that she's nerfed. I'm pretty sure she's gone, especially since the fact that Schoolyard Royale is going to be rotating at the end of March. So we can have some time without her being a busted unit. So overall, this doesn't really change anything for coral humans, like green purple coral humans. She's still gonna fit in there. She's still fine in that, because overall she's just used as a dump mechanic in order for Natsu to work. So overall, that's the fine part about her. It's the fact that she made things cost 1 was the issue with her. So now that she requires 3 tribes and only returns 1 thing and doesn't discount it, is much better. It's much healthier for the game, in my opinion. Alright, Harpuya. They just made Harpuya's effect not target the highest attack unit anymore. He still pulls from the deck. He still gives the thing that he pulls 1 attack. It's just that he doesn't discount or reset the highest attack unit on the enemy board to 1. It's now random. So this helps like Big Green, or like the decks that tried to go wide against Harpuya, because the problem with Harpuya is that you try to go wide, you build your board, and then it all just gets reduced immediately if they have 2 Harpuyas, because you ascend 1, then you ascend the other if you have the time or the MP, which most likely you do because you're playing this week on. And then now your board is dismantled, and then they just win the trades now. So now you could actually try and go wide against Harpuya, because he could hit the same thing twice, possibly. So this makes him a little bit less frustrating, but he's still gonna be fun because he still sets the unit that he's resetting to 1, which is actually a big detriment. So overall, Harpuya is okay. This is probably my favorite change, outside of the Tiffany one for sure. But this is probably like my favorite change here, with Remy actually becoming a pivotal core card for 4s whenever they release 4s in the future. Because before, when the 4s archetype first got introduced, Remy was actually being used as like a pivot mechanic, as to like trigger your 4s, as to like have more 4s in hand or on board. Remy would be used when 4s first got released. So now they're just solidifying the fact that he's actually a 4s archetypal card, and he's like a core part of a 4s archetype, which I think is very cool. It's because it's a cool callback to when 4s first released, which I like. So, and then he has a payoff for 4s hitting the board as well. So I like it. It might spawn more better 4s deck, because like you can play 4s right now, but they're not all that synergistic outside of the twins from Metro City and the security drone from Metro City. Those are only like the 4s that I can think of off the top of my head that like contribute to like 4 cards. But now Remy can actually like bridge the gap between playing those 2 cards, him, and then some other cards that actually help those cards. So this will be pretty cool. I like this. It's probably the coolest change, in my opinion. Now this one, much needed, because This card won games by itself. If you could not block this or remove it within, if it explored twice, you pretty much lost the game. Because now you're fighting against this one unit, and then if they put something, another evax on the board, that one gets going. Now you're just losing the MP race because you're losing health. You're not getting enough MP. They're smacking you in the face. It was ridiculous, especially since people found out that the Schoolyard Royale card that I forgot his name. I don't use him, but pulls a 3 cost from your deck, -5 life, and gives it 1 attack. People would just play that with evacs, and then just spread out the board, because he was a 2/5 fire by himself as a 4 cost. Evacs would just come down, hit you in the face, and then it'd just be off to the races. So them removing the rush off of this unit is actually a big deal, because even if you blocked the rush from this unit, it had 8 health, so unless you blocked it with something with like 3 or more attack, it was gonna get the Explorer if it just kept trading. Because you block for 2, it gets 2 energy points. You swing back, it goes down to 4 HP. It swings again, it goes down to 2 HP. And you get more energy. You would just get the Explorer if you played it right. You didn't even need to hit face for the agility most of the time. But if it did, you pretty much you controlled the game from that point. So them removing the rush from this was a lot better. They could have kept the rush on this if they reduced its health. They needed to make it like a 1/6 or a 1/5 if they wanted to keep the rush on it. But the fact that they wanted to keep the stats on it instead, they had to remove the rush because this thing was way too tanky for how quickly it just won games. For how cheap it was as well. So, well-deserved nerf. I know I abused it for a little bit, so makes sense. Now, Osprey, another well-deserved nerf because it literally invalidated chain form completely because it was chain form in a unit. Granted, it only hit explore units, but that was the whole point of what was being released for purple during this expansion, the metal suit expansion. So this just made things way too out of control if you let it hit. Now he only hits 1 purple unit with explore when the energy procs instead of the whole hand. So because before you would not want to let this thing hit at all, and it became a problem, the fact that it had flight. So it became an immediate threat when it hit the board. Oh, I didn't even notice they removed the death, the gain 1 MP. I didn't even see that before. Oh, that's actually a lot better now. I guess also since they just released Yuri, so Yuri death reduces it 2 or more cost by 2 when he dies. So makes more sense that this doesn't have MP because the Explore deck was just out racing decks most of the time because they had cheap units. So again, overall, now you can let this hit a couple of times and not be scared that you're giving them too much value. Yes, they're still buffing, but you can actually like plan out ahead for their buffs being had. Because before it was just like if this thing hit twice, you know things were coming down with like 4 attack, and it became a problem. But now you can let this thing hit a couple times and be fine. Use this, another well-deserved nerf, because it just invalidated Jill completely for rocket launcher. I mean, Jill rocket launcher wasn't doing anything beforehand, but that's just made it so that there was no reason to use Jill's hero art at all. So now it still gives you the rocket launcher, but it now costs 3 instead of reducing its cost, which is a lot more fair, because you're giving purple one of the best red removal cards ever released. One of the best. And you're giving it the discount that a hero art gives it on something that you can run 3 of. Now, if this was a legendary, it could have stayed like this. But it's something you can run 3 of. And that became a problem. So, with this making the rocket launcher cost 3, we can actually fight back against this a little bit better because they're going to be spending a little bit more MP. Because before, they didn't have to spend that much MP on their units because of Yuri now being released. And also, Club Girl also reducing explore units in your hand. So, they didn't have to spend much on their units. They didn't have to spend much on their actions. So, because their actions, most of their actions cost 2 or less. I'm pretty sure like all of them. The only ones that cost more than 2 were the legendaries that you played. The board bounce, and then the newly released legendary that buffs your deck. And yeah, that buffs your deck by -1. So even more unit reduction. So they didn't need the fact that the rocket launcher cost 2 as well. So this I like as well. This is the most pointless change that they could have made. I don't understand why they did this. I understand the fact that they did this to reduce or breathe new life into core cards. But the fact that they still have the -2 to your maximum MP on this card is the problem, because 4 MP 3/7s don't really matter all that much anymore. There's no reason to run 4 MP 3/7s in black, especially with this big of a downside. And I mean, somebody will probably try it. I won't, but this is a pointless change in my opinion. Now, if they remove the -2 maximum MP while he's on the board, I'd have been perfectly fine with this. I'd be like, oh, this is cool. But the fact that he still has -2 MP to your maximum MP, I don't like it. Somebody could prove me wrong and make a deck out of this, and it could be a top meta threat, and I'll change my opinion. But as of right now, looking at this on paper, I don't understand why they did this without removing the downside. Alright, moving on. For survival, it now costs 5. It still does the same thing it does before. The wording is just different. But this is a buff for Uro. So Uro doesn't have to play 3 of the new captured spider card to revive their big things. They could probably play 1 or 2 of them and run 3 force revivals, because I believe this card is a rare. Just like captured spider. But for the most part, yes, this is more expensive by 1, but this is just a better revival for Uro at the end of the day, because instead of making the unit that you're summoning with captured spider go to the grave faster, pretty much, it's actually buffing it instead, which is worth the 1 MP investment. So you might not even run captured spider if this card is getting changed like this. Maybe you run 1 at the very most, but this is just an Uro buff, because the Uro deck wasn't doing much before because things were way too fast for it. Just like the big green deck, things were just too fast for it. So this helps that deck keep up. Double gains 1 HP. when the Desperate Jailbreak came out, people obviously did try double with the tribe in black. Um, he was being used, yes. And then when Metro City of the Dead came out, double was he like completely disappeared. Completely disappeared because one, frenzy archetype, and two, it was just the fact that they nerfed the other the tribe cards for black, the unlawful arrest and the revive. They got more expensive, so just the tribe deck in general just got used a lot less. Even if when people did play it, they didn't play double anymore. But once Metal Suit Mafia came out and Black had Life Sack and multiple tribe units, he actually came back. Not as much as he did when Desperate Jailbreak first came out, but he was a little bit more playable. So I understand why they buffed this card. They wanted him to be used a little bit more, but this just makes him a little bit better in the Spike Launch Metal Suit Mafia deck, because that's where I was using him because of the multiple tribes. Because you just play you played Marcellus, a couple of revives, and then you play double to heal up whenever necessary, because the tribes would be fit pretty much just playing the deck, and double would just help you heal. So overall, it's fine. This change is fine. Hero art changes. Envoy is now 2 AP cheaper, which I like because halfway through this new expansion, I started messing around with playing the growth stuff again after the supplemental cards got released, because I wanted to see if I could try and make Envoy a little bit better, because I want to try and play Hardballer, but Hardballer got hard countered by Leaf End, and I wanted a deck that could circumvent that. Like, you could still play Hardballer, he get reset, and you'd still have a unit on the board that was kind of a threat. Because before, if you played it with any other red hero art and your Hardballer got reset by a Leaf End, it was bad news bears. It was just sitting there as a 0/9. It just locked up your board, so you couldn't grow up your other units, because they would most likely just ignore it, and it became an issue. So also makes Summon Mad Joey a little bit better. You can trigger the hero art a little bit more often, so you can try and get to that 4 a little bit better. But I still don't think that makes Mad Joy. It makes him more playable than he was before, but not by much, if you get what I mean. But overall, this is a good buff. I like this. This, I have no idea why they did this. Shadowblade was one of the best, probably the best deck in the game at the moment right now. And then they now just made it even scarier. You didn't even need to use Shadowblade most of the time, because the games ended so fast that you didn't really need it. You maybe used it once or twice. Twice is a stretch, but most of the time you only used it once. So now the fact that it does more damage, granted it's by 1, I think this just makes this deck a lot better. A little bit more scary as well. What I would like to have seen with this is if they still could have buffed this like they did like 6 and 8, but I would have liked to see the hero health go down by 1, so she only gains 2 life. It's like, yes, she's gaining life, but there's so much life gain in purple right now that I don't think she needs it. Needs all that extra life gain, especially with the Schoolyard Royale cards. And then even purple has other ways to heal outside of, even when Schoolyard Royale rotates. Purple still has other ways to heal as well. So I would have liked to see the hero health go down by 1, so she only gains 2 life for this extra damage. But overall, I like this patch. The only low light I have is Vile. I still don't understand why they did this to this card. Tiffany, big nerf. Evax, big nerf. I want to try Force stuff with Remy, because Remy is cool. This is probably like my favorite change in this whole patch. Ascension deck got a bunch weaker, a lot weaker, with Tiffany being removed out of the deck, because you can't play Tiffany and play that deck optimally the way that it is now, because in order to return things back, you would need to play demons, because the only other Ascension card that would fit in the Ascension archetype would be the legendary Virgil, but he's the only demon that gives you your 3rd tribe outside of human and machine. So you'd have to play more demons in order to make her work, and that doesn't seem feasible. So Tiffany is out of the Ascension deck. I believe they go back to Ivan now, or I've been seeing people play Blizzard Buffalo from Desperate Jailbreak as just a good solid unit to play, and also draw more units from your deck so you can have more Ascension options. So instead of Tiffany being in the deck, I think Tiffany comes out, Ivan goes back in. I believe that's what goes on for Ascension. But good nerf for Tiffany. Tiffany's finally dead, thank God. Frank, okay. Crescent Grizzly's cool, I guess. Mad Joey didn't really move all that much. Colonel's interesting, that I want to definitely try as well alongside Remy. And Gunvolts help support that as well, so that you'll have more viable machines to play alongside Zero. More viable cheap machines as well, along with Solo, because I have to believe Solo was the only other unit being played alongside Zero for Fafnir summons. So a couple cool things to try. Overall, I like this patch. Only thing, like I said, did not like is the Vile change. Could care less about the Earl stuff. Odd voice cool, but overall, I like this patch. And if you guys have any things that I missed or want to comment on, let me know. And appreciate you guys for watching. See you in the new patch.